6 of President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet nominees are on Capitol Hill today for their Senate confirmation hearings. One of the most highly anticipated hearings of the day was for Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi. Now, she served as the Attorney General of the state of Florida and has openly denied the results of the 2020 presidential election. The president-elect has previously mentioned retaliating against those who he thinks have wronged him in the past, leading many Democrats to express their concern about what Bondi may do as the head of the Justice Department. Now, when asked about this, she refused to say Trump lost in 2020.
Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
CBS News political reporter Taurean Small joins us now from Capitol Hill. Taurean, Pam Bondi also says she wants to end the weaponization of the DOJ. Let's quickly play a clip of that and get your reaction on the back end.
If confirmed, I will fight every day to restore confidence and integrity to the Department of Justice and each of its components. The partisanship, the weaponization will be gone. America will have one tier of justice for all.
So help us understand that all. She would not acknowledge that Trump lost in 2020, and she is saying she won't weaponize the DOJ, but Trump has said the opposite. What should we make of this testimony?
Yeah, Errol, this was really a case of Bondi trying to prove her independence from Trump. During this hearing, actually, Senator Whitehouse questioned her on this supposed enemy list that Donald Trump has created in an attempt to get back at some of his political rivals. She was asked about that point blank, and she said she knew nothing of this enemy list, that would not exist under a Department of Justice run by her. She was also asked about whether or not some controversial picks to be a part of that department, like FBI designee Kash Patel, what he said about Democrats and other political rivals, whether or not that could affect her or impact her doing the job. She dismissed any concerns about that, saying once again that her goal is to make sure that the public is at large more confident in the Department of Justice than when she will take it up, presumably if she is confirmed.
What about pardoning of January 6th defendants, those involved in the insurrection? What did Ms. Bondi have to say on that topic?
Well, she said that pardoning, as we both know, is something that happens because of a president, not necessarily because of an attorney general. But she was pressed on whether or not she would agree with that decision. She said, look, if she has to review the cases of these individuals, specifically nonviolent individuals, she would gladly take that on. But she did not necessarily say whether or not the president, incoming president, will be justified in pardoning of anyone who committed any crimes on January 6th. And this was something that was a campaign promise for Donald Trump. He made this a part of his platform, really saying that January 6th is not what Democrats have painted out to, really envisioning it as a largely peaceful protest that also happened to include violence. As we know, though, that not only was there violence involved, but this was an attempt to stop the certification of the electoral results that many Republicans, like you also said, including Pam Bondi, disagreed with the results of the 2020 election.
All right, Taurean Small getting us the latest from Capitol Hill. Thanks so much.